earlier this year, I got a chance to catch a conversation that you had at a film festival in Belgium. And you spoke about your films in a way that I found really compelling, because it's also when you watch your films, it's very obvious that you really believe in art, in formal aesthetics, and that you can actually use visual strategies to kind of convey a message about political change. And I remember you're also using the term "the camera of the dispossessed," which is also the title of one of your works. Am I right? Yeah. Yeah, the installation work, yeah. And I think that term really stuck with me, the camera of the dispossessed, because you often think about, you can think about the gaze of a dispossessed person, or the perspective we often talk about, but a camera is a tool. And a tool can be both used and it can also be abused in many ways. And you know that the camera has been both used and abused. It can be abused by the oppressor, and it can be used by people who fight for liberation. And I've also, me personally, I've also grown up with that kind of use of camera. And I found that really compelling. So also your work works in that way. So you work in that way, and you can see it in your work. So that's what I hope we can talk about in this conversation. So this is kind of an introduction. I just want to start by asking you, how did you start working with the camera in different ways? Because you can see it in those three works as well, that you start with a camera, like filming, and then you have different kinds of cameras coming along. So maybe you can start,
I never seen the films in this order, which is kind of interesting, because the first one, the balconies, I shot myself in 2007. And it is basically unfinished balconies in my hometown, Ramle. That I grew up in this small town, and even the house where I was born, the second floor was unfinished. And as a child, I would play in the second floor. But then at some point, I think I was maybe 12 or 13, I asked my father why it is the way it is. And then for the first time, I understood, actually, this house that I was born in does not belong to us. It belonged to a Palestinian family that was dispossessed, displaced in 1948. And when they left Palestine, they were in the process of finishing their house. So they actually never finished the house on the second floor. And so what happened, just to give you historical context, what happened after 1948, that the vast majority of the Palestinians were expelled from their country in different ways, by different means. And those Palestinians who could stay, for example, in Ramle and Jaffa, they were then gathered and put in one area that, in the case of Ramle, was called already in 1948 the Arab ghetto. I mean, it's a direct, adaptation of language coming from Germany and from Europe, now somehow used by the Israelis against the Palestinians, against the natives of the country. So I understood that actually this house is not our house, but my grandparents, they managed to stay simply because they went to the Catholic church in my hometown, and they could stay there. And the army would come. I'm telling the story because it's really quite fascinating how really an individual or little stories, they change really history, and they make people stay in their home country. So in this church, there was this Italian priest that every time the army would come to the monastery to ask him to get the people out, he would come out with the Vatican flag. And eventually, these 600 people, Palestinians, they could stay. And among them were my grandparents. And then in 1955, and just to continue the story of this Italian priest, because it's very funny, he ran away with the Palestinian woman to Italy. This was a very funny ending of the story. But he's like a legend in the town. So yeah, I grew up in this house, and then one day I don't know why exactly, but I started seeing all these unfinished balconies everywhere around me. And then I decided to make this film, basically filming all these unfinished balconies. So this is 2007. So the other two films, Paradiso, 38108, which again a title that I borrowed from Borges, and Under, also from Borges. They both actually were made during the making of a Fidai film, because in the process itself I gathered a lot of material and I was watching a lot of things, and I came across all these aerial shots that were in a way documenting Palestine from the air. Some of it was made for archaeological kind of films, educational archaeological films, and some for the military. And so in the process of making Fidai film, I watched a lot of things, and then I saw these materials and I thought, okay, this is actually a subject in itself, and I created a project for that. And then the same with the army material that I came across, the same thing. I thought, okay, I should make something with that. I didn't know at the beginning what I'm doing with it, so I would just gather. So what was really fascinating about this camera, and I'm coming back to the camera of Dispossessed, how I came up with this idea, that the camera that was used in making these films wanted to really own the place. So it was really quite absurd because, for example, all these aerial shots that we see, the camera can, some of these archaeological sites, they are from the Roman time. I found, for example, maybe 15 different films from different periods doing almost the same camera movement over this castle. So at some point I was thinking, I mean, if you really own the place, you don't do that. You do it because you have doubts, and you keep doing it somehow to make yourself own it by filming it again and again, and some of it is really the same angle. So and it costs a lot of money to do that. I mean, you have to have really helicopter and camera people and all of that. But then just to do the same thing again, every couple of years.
And also to film from above, I guess it's also, when you own it, maybe you would film it from there and not from above in the same way.
Yeah, I think it's a fascination of wanting really to control everything. And what was really interesting about these films, it's really interesting to observe, because one of the things that I really love about going through archival footage and historical footage, that you can study patterns, and you can really see things that you usually don't see. And for example, most of these shots were really interested in this archaeological sites. I mean, they were part of this whole idea that, or a kind of search for the Jewish history of the place. And most of the time it would fail, because there was no just there wasn't just Jewish history in Palestine. There were so many histories in Palestine. I mean, definitely it's one of the histories in Palestine, one of the existences in Palestine, but not the only one. But anyway, so many of these shots, they ended up really filming a lot, and etc. But sometimes they fall into a trap. The fascination they had with what they would call later the real biblical life, way of life, which is the Palestinians. And it's totally crazy, because it's the same people that you would say they are not people, they don't exist. But the camera somehow fall into this trap, because it's so attractive, it's so cinematic. You see them working the land, you see them, they are part of the landscape. And then what you say, oh, this is the way we lived. This belongs to us as well. So yeah, I found all these traces, in fact, that helped me to come up with the idea of the camera of the dispossessed. And by that I mean, in fact, not being able to do what they did. I cannot fly over Palestine. No Palestinian can fly over Palestine and film. And all is left is in fact to basically take this camera works and turn it against itself.
Yeah, and it, I think also, as Sarah said when introducing you, she said what is written in your bio, which is the one that I found, which is that you use cinema as a way to bear witness and to document. But I feel that's not only what's being done here, because you actually alter the images quite a lot. So you use kind of documentary material, and it's, at least I imagine it as you're just laying it out and just thinking about all the ways that you can, manipulate this material somehow. And also in the last two films, you see the editing, which is not, I mean, even if you have these quite cinematic shots, the editing is a bit off in a way, like it's fast, but at the same time you repeat the images. So it's a mix between like slow cinema and fast action films in a way. It's somewhere in between. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about working with those images in that way, like also slowing them down and then speeding them up again. Sometimes I've seen in your films that you blur the images, you take like certain things out and leave some things. You leave some things in the image just to highlight something in the images. So manipulating like frames in this way, how you work with that, and
I don't believe in any kind of objectivity in the image. I mean, I think everything I was watching was from a totally subjective point of view. It was my point of view on the things that they shot, for example. So I saw things that usually they didn't see. So this is again the camera of the dispossessed as well. So is seeing what they basically do not see. And about the repetition, I mean, you know, I come from like cinematically speaking. When I started with the language of balconies, very slow. You can really fall asleep, and I love that, you know, falling asleep in the cinema. And this was actually following, this shot was I made after the roof that we will screen here as well. And no, we don't.
No,
okay.
it's because,
Because
let me just explain this really quickly. Because when we started making this program, which will be Silver Series, and the retrospective program that was screened in a loop here in the cinema for 3 weeks, it turned out to be 8 hours.
Okay, so.
Because we just started including more and more films,
sure.
because I wanted to screen everything. So we had to take
But you
a
have
lot
the
of
link.
it out.
If someone wants to watch it, you can have it.
I can give you, make it happen, but yeah.
So about the repetition, then I, you know, when I started working with archives, somehow abandoned this language of the so-called slow cinema. Not that I don't like it, you know. One of my really great masters, it's Sami Liang, if you know, like from Taiwan. It's very slow. He made a couple of years ago 1-hour film with a monk walking step by step from one place to another. I mean, you think about it and you think, oh, no, I don't want to watch that. But actually, if you sit and watch it, you watch it. For me, it is fascinating. But I don't make this kind of films anymore. Sami Liang is making them. But with archival footage, what was interesting is really the repetition. And I became interested in repetitions. And that was because I was watching, you know, these same shots again and again. And the montage that I came up with was actually, by repetition, you cancel yourself. So when you watch a shot, like the camera is going around this site again and again and again, at some point you think, why? Why is this? Why? What for? What for? It's exactly what you know, I was saying before, is owning the place. So to disown the place, to liberate the place, is to do this repetition. And turning basically the image against itself. So you cannot make really a slow army film. That's why Paradiso is an action film. I mean, I came across these, maybe you can make slow army film. But in this case, you know, when I came across these films, and there were many of them, and again, they would shoot in the same places, because the desert in Palestine, which is actually, you know, if you know a bit about the history of Palestine, the geography of Palestine, the desert in Palestine is almost 50% of the country. And vast territories from this area in Palestine is controlled by the army, because they use it for training, for testing their weapons, for making explosions, for military camps, etc. And you cannot even visit it. And I actually could visit it, could watch it because of these films. I could see the landscape for the first time. This is again the camera of the dispossessed. And they were shooting all these army films. And by the way, you know, they were not films documenting exercises. No, they were like films acted, casted. They brought like good-looking white men, blonde usually, and they are the officers in these films. And they would shoot in the same locations. And sometimes they were, you know, because I got obsessed with this, you know, for half a year I was just watching army films. Sometimes you have a camera movement, you see the tank or the jeep driving, and you would see the same camera movement 10 years later.
We are screening Recollection. which is based on these cinema images. And then that's the one I was thinking about, where you actually remove a lot of the material to show highlights parts of it. So I don't know if any of you have seen this film, but I can try to describe. You can actually describe it better than me, but you highlight the people who are kind of left out of the image if you keep everything else in the image. So the bystanders, the people in the background, the Palestinians really, who are still there, but are not supposed to be a part of the film that they are in.
No, at all. They actually, I use the expression, they smuggle themselves into the image. Because these films, again, really the cinema in general, not only in the context of Israel, Palestine, has played such a role in colonizing places, occupying places, and also colonizing our minds, in fact. I mean, when I was screening Fidei film in Vienna and 2 weeks ago, and I had a talk with some students, and then one student was saying, yeah, the Western. Imagine, what we call the Western. What all this Western's about? And even the name of this genre, the Westerns. So they were all about, this settlers fighting against the Native Americans. And we watched these films as kids, and I think majority of people would affiliate themselves with these settlers, and not with because the way this cinema portrayed them was so they're savage. Why I'm saying that? Because when after I finished making my second film, following The Roof, Port of Memory, I was invited to screen it in London in 2009. So I entered my hotel room, and there was this old-fashioned hotel, and there was on the TV welcoming message, "Welcome, Mr. Kamal Aljafari." So you enter the room and you see that, you are kind of disturbed, who put this there on TV? So the first thing I did, I changed channels and I went to take a shower. And I came out of the shower and I see a Chuck Norris film playing on TV. And I'm watching, and I could recognize this place, and this was shot in Jaffa. But I never saw this movie before. And suddenly I remembered I saw the shooting of this film when I was a kid. And I sat on the bed, I remember, and I watched this film for the first time. And it was Delta Force 3, starring Chuck Norris, which was shot in Jaffa in the early 80s. And this is where I came up with this idea. I should do something with these films that were shot in Jaffa that actually occupied Jaffa, in many different ways. So I started collecting all these films, fiction films. There were mostly Israeli films, but also American films. And because most of the neighborhoods of Jaffa, along the years, it got destroyed and the city almost vanished. And I could see the traces of the city just in the background. So these fiction films that actually completely ignore the Palestinians. They don't exist in these films. It is so absurd that, for example, in Delta Force, it's a like typical Hollywood ridiculous film. Some terrorists, we don't know where they are from exactly because they speak very strange Arabic. The actors were Mizrahi Jewish people that didn't speak properly Arabic. So they were speaking this very strange Arabic. And they were not even, the Palestinians were not even allowed to play themselves as terrorists. So anyway, in this film, yeah, you see this American hostages that, you know, they at the beginning of the film, some terrorists, they hijack a plane and they take it to Beirut. And this was all shot in Jaffa. And for the final scene, entirely shot in Jaffa. So for the final scene of this film, Chuck Norris, you know Chuck Norris, no? Of course. Comes with his Delta Force, and they free all these hostages, and they were kept in a school shot in Jaffa. So it was an old school on the beach in Jaffa. And for the final scene, the municipality of Tel Aviv let them use real-time explosions. So you see the building being exploding in the film, and in fact, after the shooting, this building did not exist anymore. So basically, really real-time cinematic violence. So what I wanted to do with this project was basically, because every time I would watch, and there were many of these films, I found like really dozens of them, they were endless. The actor, they were all shot in American style, meaning, again, slow cinema, meaning if the actor moves, like he walks out of the frame, you cut. You don't let 1 second of like empty frame without the actor. It was really difficult for me because I wanted to see the place. This is where I came up with the idea I should remove them because they were standing in my way. So I started with this kind of crazy idea that took me almost 3 years, removing the actors from the foreground. And then in this process, I discovered suddenly all these Palestinians that were in the background. They were not part of the movies. They were basically living there. And, you know, if you watch the film, you will see. And some of the shots, they were like, suddenly a head is appearing from a wall, behind the wall, like this. Because they wanted to look at the shooting, you know? They were not allowed to do that. So, and then there's this person, you know, and one of these people that I found was actually my uncle as well. So I realized that actually, wow, cinema is something quite crazy because there are always traces there. Yeah. You cannot hide anything. It's just, it will be there, and it was there. And, you know, and then I made a film about all these people. I was going crazy because I started feeling, oh, all these people that were hiding smuggled themselves into the image. And, you know, they were waiting for me one day to make a film about them.
Yeah, that film really made an impression on me because, you know, I also, I grew up with that kind, I mean, Chuck Norris is maybe a little bit before my time, but still, like, I grew up with that kind of cinema, like, and that's like the visual culture that I've been surrounded by, and I've, you know, I also studied film, like film studies, and it's you learn that there are fiction films, and then there's documentary, and fiction's film are fiction, and documentary is about the real world, and then when you see projects like this and see the film recollection that you made, you realize how real, you know, when you talked about, also last time I heard you speak, you spoke about that explosion that was real, and you just realized that it's not fiction at all, it's a real school exploding. And it's, I think, that's really powerful to think about. And on that note, I also want to talk a little bit about sound, because that was, I think, you get if you also stay for the next film after that film, or watch it later, or you have already seen it, it's really obvious, like, that the way you work, it's very much about sound. Also, Paradiso is also edited. Yes, it's edited as an action film, but it's also scored in it's edited for sound in a way. It's very musical in the way it's edited. and the sound has different layers. I find it really intriguing that you keep the sound of old films, the playing of old films in the background, and then you layer it with, just surroundings or music and different things. And maybe you can speak a little bit about how you work with sound and also how you collaborate with people on making the sound for your films.
So I think I understood the potential of working with sound with recollection, because it came really out of big difficulties I had, because this commercial films, the sound was horrible, and I couldn't use any of it because it was like really very bad sound. I mean, bad in the sense that there were dialogues all the time and actors acting, and and then music, terrible music, and all that. So I couldn't use any of these sounds. So, but I wanted to make a film. How to make a film without the sound? So the only thing that recollection is made entirely out of this fiction films. Again, for me, they were kind of documentary. Ironically speaking, because it's really ironically speaking, because these same films that wanted to, so to say, uproot the Palestinians for the second time, they ended up becoming an evidence. But that's another subject in itself. But for recollection, I went back to Jaffa, and I don't know where I had this idea from, but I thought I should just record sound at night. And at night, because I had this belief that places at night, they free themselves from the burden of the present. So I was looking for somehow sounds that are, more mysterious. So I spent 2 weeks starting to recording sound at night, starting like at 10 at night and finishing in the morning for 2 weeks, like that. I would go to the same locations that I saw in the films, but now they became something else. And I would just record sounds and stand there, record sound. And one of these nights, I did the recordings with a Danish artist called Jacob Kierkegaard. Maybe some of you know his work. We studied together in Cologne. He came with me, and we did these recordings together every night. And I remember one scene that was for me so mysterious and weird in a way. So we were recording in a Palestinian neighborhood near the port in Jaffa, and it was like 4 in the morning. And we started walking down the steps to the port, and it was a very calm weather and beautiful sound. And we walk, and the closer we got to the water, both of us had the same sensation. It's not that I'm crazy. That the waves, they started somehow to play with us. They were beginning. They were slow, and they were getting more dynamic and faster, and this is where both of us with headphones, we look at each other and we smile, because we discover, in fact, what I would later describe as the emotional potential of sound, and in a way, sound is so difficult to work with and so easy to work with, because sound has no identity. So if you hear something that touches you, it touches you. You don't have the filter of an image of the person, the color of the person, or the location, or whatever. It is really touching you because it is touching you as a human being. And this is the part of sound that I was mostly interested in when I following actually the experience of making recollection. So there's a lot of like elements that in the narrative, especially in a film like Recollection, because there's no dialogues there. It's like really, this is a slow cinema. There is only one dialogue at I think sometime 40 minutes in the film, but it's mostly really having basically again having a walk. Like this is what I sometimes when I do workshops, I tell the students, how is it possible that the mostly Europeans, you like walking, no? I mean, you go hiking. But when you make films, you make all like films that are so like in a hurry. Why you don't hike in your films, you know? Then they understand what I'm talking about. Yeah. So, okay. So, in fact, it was really a film about walking. Yeah. Walking in this place that actually physically now does not exist. It only exists in image. That's why the way, you know, when we worked on this project, I was very lucky to work with a German guy that studied with me. And one day I tell him, yeah, I want to walk in the image. And he is a kind of a freak, and he told me, you know, we can develop, if you want to walk in the image, we can develop a style as well for this walk. So that's why when the visual effect that we created, because many times, again, about this difficulty of the American shots that they made, sometimes I have just really 1 second of the place empty without the actor. So I would just use that, and then we would animate it, you know, like give you the illusion that it's moving, but it's actually just bullshit of putting some, how do you call it, some movement below and above the image, you know, like this, and people believe, oh, it's moving, but actually it's just an image. So I told him, okay, I want to walk in the image, you know, I want to, like, there was this image of the stairs from the port to the neighborhood of my grandparents, in fact. So I told him, I want to walk, like, I want to, you know, have the sensation of walking. And he did this programming that you have the sensation that you know, you walk like you walk, you know. You know, in cinema, when people do this zooms or dollies, they have always difficulties because it's too perfect. It looks very smooth, and actually most directors, they want a smooth camera, which is really horrible. Because the smooth camera does not produce any emotions. What produces emotions is a camera that is amateur. And this was the idea. You know, I'm just walking in the city, I'm an amateur. So we did that, and then we used the same kind of language to give you the impression that this movement is done by the same person. So it's just repetition, you know, he walks the same way always. The sound. So all of that really helped me as well to have ideas in the sound, because, okay, if I'm walking, I want to have some steps. So we spent really a long time at night, me and Jakob Kirke, walking and recording our steps at night. So, and then one day I tell, I mean, all of these films, I never have really the exact ideas for sound. You know, it's something that you develop with time, you know, then you have ideas. And this is something I love about working with already existing footage, because you don't waste time in shooting. And you just use what is already done, and then you rework it. So
you can use all this time in the sound studio. Right?
Sorry?
You can spend all the time that you would.
And then we recorded like thousands of steps. But what I wanted to say about sound finally, so one day I tell Jakob, but you know, all of that is a dream. like this place does not exist anymore, you know. So it's a film about someone dreaming, and if he's dreaming, he must be somewhere. Where is he dreaming? Where is he sleeping? And then Jakob said, "Okay, let's record you sleeping sleeping in Berlin, you know." And we did the recording. It was terrible. I was moving too much in the bed, and we couldn't use it. But then I told him the next day, let's move let's leave the mic there, and I won't sleep at night at my place. And I came back the following day, and I listened to the sound for 7 hours, imagine, at night. And it was amazing, because you have no idea what happens when you sleep. And the changes that actually happen in the sound. For example, towards like 5 o'clock in the morning, you start hearing really beautiful sounds of birds, of life. And we ended up having a complete 70, I think the film is like 70 minutes of the sound of my bedroom in Berlin. We just played it in the film.
But that's not the only sound.
Of course, but this sound for me is really amazing, because there are sometimes, I mean, we laid this sound, and then you hear steps, and then a minute or a few seconds after, there is a scene in the film where you see someone like taking the step. You don't see the person, you see the steps walking. So it creating a whole like mystery that actually for me, what is art about is to create this mystery of life, and sound can do that.
Yeah. Also, can I ask a question? Because you, in the Paradiso, you had the pencil.
Yeah.
Was that recorded, or was it from the? It was recorded, right?
Yeah. Because
because I watched the film really closely again now, and I was unsure.
You know, with these two projects, I work with a sound artist from Milan, Attila Farabelli.
Yeah.
I was really very happy to work with.
Who was also in Oslo actually a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
For a film festival, Mirage.
And yeah, so we were watching the material, and these soldiers, like, I mean, this subject is it's quite, I mean, the subject of military films, because they were so much into what they were learning, you know. I mean, what is all these films about? It's about all the time mastering how to hit your target. So you measure, you write, you calculate, so you can bomb a place, right? Now in these films, this is something that actually, again, the camera of the dispossessed. So they went again and again to the same places, and they shot this war kind of scenarios, but you don't see the enemy. Like, where is the enemy? And actually, one of these narrations that I'm using from one of these films, and he says the enemy is behind the hills. And he kept repeating that. And what is really, again, ironical about it, that the enemy is, of course, the Palestinians, but you don't see them because you don't recognize that there are people, that they exist. But it's still, you're fighting them. And finally, at some point, you see they end, because they just play by themselves, you know, and then the film becomes really that they are exploding themselves, you know.
Yeah.
So when I was working on that, and we had a lot of shots of them writing, you know, numbers, and you know, it looked, and the sound was terrible. And I told Attila, let's record ourselves. You know, like we took a paper and, you know, one of these pencils, and we started playing like this.
Yeah, but
it's out of sync, you know. I love out of sync.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. That I think that's really great in many of your films, because you can see that the sound it's like almost in sync, but it's subtle, but it's.
I don't like sync. I think the idea of sync is a terrible invention of cinema.
And also the explosions with no sounds, and then sound of explosion a bit later, and all these things are, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, life is completely out of sync. I mean,
Yeah.
and I think that this is something that we can do. We can do more in art, you know, like to put things out of sync.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're running out of time. For the first time, I haven't followed. Does anyone know what time it is?
Any questions? We spoke.
Okay, yeah, 7:45. So we have 5 minutes actually. Okay. I'll just ask a quick question, and then I'll open up for the audience to ask questions as well. I think, yeah. It's maybe the answer is obvious, but I will just ask it anyway. And a Fidei film was released this year, and the material is from the 80s, and you're pretty consistent in working with archive material, and archive material which is often decades old. I'm just wondering if we can talk a little bit about why, what is going on today, it is important to still work with archive material. I mean, it somehow is a reminder, you know. We talked about repetitions in form, so you repeat the same images over and over again, and you talked about it being about ownership, but it also reflects history in a way, like how history repeats itself again and again and again. And that is also quite present in some of your films where you use repetition. I think also in a Fidei film. So maybe you can speak a little bit about that before I open up for the audience to ask a question.
I mean, you answered the
yeah,
the
I know.
questions,
Sorry.
because in a way, like when you watch when you watch Fidei film, if you watch it, I mean, the film was we finished editing in July last year, so it has nothing to do with what happened as of October. Because sometimes when asking the film, it's you made this film. No, I didn't, because there has been already 100 years of violence and colonialism in Palestine. And so yeah, when I, again, speaking of the pattern and working with historical footage, it allowed me really to see things that actually even myself as a Palestinian, I didn't think about them anymore, because we are too busy in the present, you know, what's happening in the news, and, you know, we don't look back at, for example, what happened during the British Mandate in Palestine, which started in 1920, finished in 47. And some of the footage that I found, for me, they were really quite shocking, because you could see, and these films that I used in the film, in Fidei film, they were stolen from the Palestine Research Center. And there were historical footage that were shot in the 30s by British people filming the British Army in Palestine. And the British Army, I mean, probably something you don't know about. There is a wonderful book that you can read by Rashid Khaldi. It was published 2 years ago, 100 Years of Violence in Palestine, if I'm mistaken. 100 Years of War over Palestine, on Palestine, over Palestine, something like that. Rashid Khalidi. And there, when I was working on the project and I saw this material about the British violence, because there you can see the beginning of the collective punishment that the British mastered. Everywhere the British had colonies, they practice the collective punishment. Collective punishment is very simple. If someone resists, if a resistance comes from a neighborhood, from a street, you destroy the street, you destroy the neighborhood, you punish everybody. And the British started that in Ireland, and they practiced that for hundreds of years. And when they came to Palestine, and Palestine was a very resistant place against the British project in Palestine, And there was the 1936 revolution, which was mostly a peasant revolution against the settlements and against the Zionist movement and the British project there, etc., etc. And it was a huge revolution led by the peasants in Palestine, because they were the ones the mostly affected, because they were taking their lands and changing their way of life. And they suppressed this uprising in such a violent way that they within 15 years, they killed and injured 10% of the population of Palestine. I mean, it is something that even Palestinians, they have forgotten. By the time the 1948 war took place in Palestine, the Palestinian society was already exhausted. They killed many of their men, their leaders, and this was the work of the British Mandate. Why I'm saying that? Because
history repeating itself.
Exactly. So when I was watching these materials, and they were, you know, I was seeing the practices of the Israeli army today. I mean, burning homes of people, destroying, collective punishment. And just a historical fact, in every place in Palestine, a small town, a city, the British built 2 buildings, a prison and a police station. And in 1948, they handed this to the Israeli authorities. And most of these prisons and police stations are being used until today. So basically, this that's why, you know, the Fidei film is showing you this violence, these patterns, and doesn't tell you who is doing what. Because finally, for me, this isn't the point. The point is what is being done against the people. So you see the burning of homes repeating itself, you know, in 67 and 40, of course, before 48, in the 30s, in the 48, the 67, until today. Yeah. So you don't have to see what's happening today in Gaza to, because you obviously relate to it. You know, you see actually what, you know, how actually history is taking us to this.
Does anyone have a question from the audience? So we can take one. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'll go ahead. All right. Hi, Kamal. I wanted to ask you a question. I mean, one of the things we're talking about archives, and one of the first things that Israelis did was to take over the archives of Palestinian, the registry, which was, you know, the British Mandate did the same with the Ottoman Empire. So there's something also about, like, the master narrative is about controlling the archive. And I see also your cinema dispossessed is taking that archive and, you know, and also freeing it from that colonialism over it. It's more of a question of practicality. How do the Israeli authorities allow you to have access to that archive?
Allow me.
No, I know they don't allow you, but so no. How? Sorry, I'm speaking Arabic. How do you intrude yourself? How do you extract this archive out from, you know, from that grip?
It's a long answer, but I will make it quick. So it's a very good question, and I ask this question always: how come you? Who gave you this? So actually, the Fidei film made of 2 things, two different sources of material. One is what was stolen and taken from the Palestine Research Center, and was kept for many years in these military archives, and I didn't have access. I didn't even try to go there. They wouldn't let me go in, obviously. But I read about 2 people that had some of this material. And one of them is an Israeli academic and she's in a kind of, what people call in academia post-colonial studies. So I got in touch with this woman, and she answered an email, and she said, "Oh, Kamal, I like your films." And I told her, I read that because she wrote a text about it, about this footage, and she used a photo with this military captions, etc. So I was curious, and I said, and I had the courage. I said, "Okay, you have material, like," and she answered me, "Yes, I have a lot of things at home." And I said, "Okay, I'm coming to visit. Do you think I can meet you?" She said, "Yes, sure, you can meet me." And then I made an appointment. I'm telling this, it's really, the story is horrible. I tell you now. So I made an appointment with this woman, and I went to visit her in her apartment in Tel Aviv. And she told me in this email correspondence, she said, "Yes, I can show you everything. And I just have 1 hour." So I came to her place, and she prepared a computer for me, her computer, so I can watch. She had a hard drive, and she sat next to me, and she showed me the files, and there were many files, and said, "Yeah, you can watch." So I started clicking on the files, and I started watching, and I'm watching. And she said, "Oh, you need a paper and a pen to write down?" I said, "No, I have something with me." So I started taking notes. After 10 minutes, and there were a lot of things. So in the middle of watching, I wrote actually a kind of short story about this. Her son comes back from school, and then he tells her, "What happened to the internet?" And she says, "Yeah, there's a problem with the internet." She cut the internet because she thought that I could do something to take this material or something like that. So I'm sitting there, and then the son, maybe 16 or something like that, he came from school, and then he shouts from the first floor, "Actually, no, you just took out the power." There's no problem with the internet, So he puts back the power, but she's sitting next to me. And of course, I had the idea of opening my Google Drive, and, obviously, But I couldn't do it. There was no time to do it, and she was sitting next to me. And then he comes, I like telling stories because they tell everything, And then this boy comes to the second floor. It was a big living room. I was in the kitchen. It was an open kitchen, very nice place. And in front of me, in the kitchen, I see like maybe 10 knives. Different sizes. They were like unusual sizes. I think like, why she has these knives? And then he comes, this boy, and he does a movement, and then he starts working on his arms, on his hands. And I am in the kitchen looking at this, and he's like standing upside down, like really a couple of minutes. And she's sitting next to me. And I tell her, but there's no time. There's so much. She said, "Yeah, I know, but I'm sorry, but I cannot give you this material." I said, "But, why you cannot give it to me?" Because I'm not the she said to me something so funny. She said to me, "I'm not the copyrights holder." I said, "Yes, I know. They belong to," because I could see the names of the Palestinians that made this movie. I said, "Yeah, this family, they are in Jerusalem. You can give it to them." I said, "Yeah, I got in touch with them, but they didn't want to talk to me." She was lying, of course. And at some point I told her, I need time to watch, and there were a lot of things. And she told me, no, I cannot give it to you because of the copyrights. And so after a while, and I'm telling her, but you know, I really, I want to watch. So yeah, I have to go now. I have a class because she teaches at the university, post-colonial studies. And then I walk out of the apartment with her in this room where she disconnected the computer, the internet. There was an image of a bulldozer destroying a Palestinian house as an art, photography, art in this room. So we go out, and I'm trying to find a way to kind of trick her, but this was impossible, of course. You know, she knows exactly what I want from her. And she tells me, okay, write me what you need. You took some notes, no? I said, yes, okay. So I really don't remember something more disturbing that I experienced in my life like this visit. I took a taxi. I walked a bit, and then I took a taxi to Jaffa. And I was feeling so sick from this experience. But then a couple of days after, I gathered I found the strength to write her. And I told her, I really want this material because I'm making this film, etc. And then she answered me, but I don't know, there's no way that I give it to you. But what do you need exactly? So I told her, because I could remember some of the files, so I want this and this. And then she didn't answer, like for 1 week. And then I wrote her another email. I told her, okay, if you don't send me this material, I'm publishing an article about this. And I'm going to say exactly what you told me, and I mention your name, and, I reach a point where I don't care, like you can do what you want, And then she said to me, I can send you something to watch, but I don't know how to do it. I said, okay. I created the Google Drive for her, and I sent it to her. And then she sent me some compressed files that I find a way to, use. This is one story. Now, later on, someone told me, actually, this woman, her husband works in this military. That's why she had an access to all this footage. But the other part, and then I found other things, in private hands, not this Israeli woman. The other part was actually possible to obtain because of COVID. So during COVID, many of these Israeli archives, they decided to use this time to create online portals. And they were so excited about this possibility because they wanted to give access to researchers, and they started putting like things, and I, for whatever reason, I don't know what, I cannot remember why exactly, but I came across that very early, I think the first days of this, and for almost 1 year and a half, I recorded the screen of my computer. And I created a huge archive out of their archives of everything that I thought it's the camera of the dispossessed. So the film is made of these two kind of elements because I couldn't make really a film narrating the story of Palestine without actually also using what they shot in Palestine, because they had the access to the places. They had, so yeah, this is the. So my answer is long. But,
yeah, thank you, and also thank you for the conversation.
Thank you.
I don't think we have time for more, but you're welcome to stay and watch a Fidel film now or the retrospective program will screen here as Silver Series number 9 for 3 weeks from tomorrow night, and then during daytime every weekend for 3 weeks. So either that's relevant information for you or for someone you know. Thank you so much, Kamal, for
Thank you.
accepting this invitation, coming here, and for letting us screen your films. And we didn't. I had like 3 more questions. One of them, and we don't have time now. But one of them was about your upcoming project, because you actually have a film you're making now. So we're looking forward to it. And yeah.
I will make it very short. You know, you were asking about the present.
Yes, please,
you know?
please tell us.
But you know, I just moved to Paris for doing this fellowship, and I was reading something about mini DVs that after 20 years they kind of get damaged, etc. So I got panicked, and then I had this box with all mini DVs of my first film, The Roof That You Don't Want to Screen. I'm just joking. But I started going through this box because I wanted to digitize this mini DVs. And then while going through this, I really advise you to look at what you keep in boxes and you never look at, because so I see one mini DV and it's written on it in Arabic with Hassan in Gaza. So I look at, and what is this? I thought maybe someone gave it to me, you know, because I was teaching, and sometimes students, they give you things, you know, like, I shot this watch, and then you don't give them back, you don't even watch it. So I went, most of the time I watch it, but so I went to this company and I told the guy, could you please put this tape? And he puts it in the player, mini DV, and it got stuck there. And he told me, well, now you have come tomorrow. We have to, you know, take off the player, and then I came back tomorrow, the following day. And then I'm watching, and I see the first shot is at the border with Gaza, and then in a car, and then on the beach with kids. You know, I didn't know what was this. I could see it is in Gaza. And then there's another shot, and suddenly I see myself in the mirror with the camera. Until that moment, I didn't even think that I shot it. And I discovered that this was the first thing that I ever shot when I was maybe 27. And I just got this brand new Panasonic. They were like, at the time, you know, there was this the Scandinavian Dogma films. You remember them? And they were making such a propaganda about the mini DVs and all that, that I got some money and I bought a camera. And I did a trip in Gaza. I did like a road trip in Gaza. And I took these tapes with me when I went to study in Cologne. But I never watched it. I never did anything with it. And I had it for 25 years with me. And I just discovered it now, and that's the film I am making.
So now we're talking
with Hassan in Gaza.
Now we're talking full circle. Back to you. Filming, slow cinema.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were some nice, because I was a great believer of like fixed shots, waiting. But,
Nice. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you to all of you as well.